Hello, welcome to Freedom Rocks. My name is Mark Legowski. I'm here to interview Max Kessler about the new guns law, the SAFE law. Max, welcome. You're probably as familiar with the gun law as pretty much the average New York Stater, probably more so because you've read the law. Mm-hmm. I've tried reading the law. It gets very detailed. Could you just in your own words explain what the purpose of this law was intended to be?
Well, allegedly the purpose of this law was, which is misnamed the so-called New York SAFE Act, was supposedly passed in order allegedly to make our streets safer, as our illustrious Governor Cuomo said in his State of the State address, quote, "You don't need 10 bullets to kill a deer?" Well, last I checked, Second Amendment wasn't about hunting. Second Amendment is about security. And how do they come up with a number of rounds of ammunition that are necessary for security?
Actually, it is a bit of a problem because I was under the impression that when there's home break-ins and you're using a weapon for security, there's usually 3 people involved in a home break-in, not one. So you have to be a very good shot, apparently, to be able to defend yourself with just 7 shells, especially under extreme conditions like that. But let's go back to the act again. There's several sections in the way this act has been, the bill's been drawn up. I know the first section, when I was reading it, I was kind of surprised that there was a huge emphasis on protective orders. Can you explain that a little bit in terms of what your understanding is what they're planning on doing in this act with a protective order?
Yeah, a protective order, commonly known as a restraining order, is typically issued when someone has a history of violent behavior, usually directed at a significant other, but not always, or someone actually has a history of violence. And this law, one of the few not so bad portions of this law, requires a judge to suspend or revoke a pistol license if a person willfully violates a restraining order in such a manner that involves actual or threatened use of a firearm or actually causes physical injury to someone. Also, with new orders issued, license would have to be suspended or revoked if the restraining order was issued because of actual or threatened use of a firearm or actually causing injury.
The approach to the safety of the individual that required the restraining order as means of protection. Do you believe this law will actually protect them, or is this an after-the-fact law that will be imposed as a penalty on the person that might use a weapon? Is it proactive or reactive? That's what I'm asking.
Well, every law is reactive. Every law is a reaction to something. I mean, the Patriot Act was a reaction to 9/11. I think going forward, it is a good idea to suspend or revoke pistol licenses for people who have demonstrated violent behavior, particularly anything that's sufficient to warrant a restraining order.
I think we're in agreement there. I'm a little concerned when I'm going through this, I flipped through it quickly. In the back, there's a summary, so you get about this much. It's fairly thick. You can't really tell looking at it from a distance. But there is a summary at the back, and the very first 8-10 pages deals with restraining orders, protective orders, and what the government's going to do to make sure that people with a restraining order, even if it's temporary, will lose their license. But in the summary, the purpose never even mentions the restraining order or the impact on that. Is it possible that this bill was written for a different reason, since they don't even mention it in the purpose of the bill?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically the reason it was written was to limit people's access to guns.
Now, I've heard a lot of talk about guns being like assault weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the definition of the assault weapon as the state is proposing it is realistic, or is it just kind of childish?
I have a few choice words for the definition, but I don't happen to have the bleep can here, which is what I'm planning to use at some point in the future for guests who cuss or use choice language. But basically, the only three places you ever see the term assault weapon are anti-gun propaganda, pro-gun rebuttals to anti-gun propaganda, and the law. It's really a nonsense term. I've had a number of discussions with people who support banning quote-unquote assault weapons because they think it means something, but it only means what the law says it means. Now, for example, the old definition with respect to, and I didn't print it out because I didn't want to use that much paper. It's like 40 some odd pages.
42
pages. Yeah, the old definition with respect to a rifle was a semi-automatic that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least two of the following characteristics: a folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a bayonet mount, a flash suppressor or a threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, or a grenade launcher. Nowadays, with the so-called New York SAFE Act, the new definition, as it relates to rifles, is any semi-automatic rifle that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least one of the following characteristics: a folding or telescoping stock, pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a thumb hole stock, that's new, a bayonet mount, a second hand grip or a protruding hand grip that can be held by the non-trigger hand, flash suppressor, muzzle brake, muzzle compensator, or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, muzzle brake, or muzzle compensator. Notice that muzzle brake and muzzle compensator are new features on the list. Or a grenade launcher. I'm not going to defend grenade launcher.
Are muzzles on weapons something new, or have they been around a while?
The muzzle's been around since the existence.
Why weren't these types of terminology used in the past rather than introducing them in such a...
Well, because they didn't have muzzle brakes and flash suppressors when guns were first invented. Unfortunately, what we're seeing with this definition is creep. It starts by taking a politically incorrect term, assault weapon, and defining it to contain two or more features. Then they change the law so that it only includes one feature, only has to have at least one feature, and they add new features. And what that does, and unfortunately we're coming up on a break here, what that does is it expands the field of what's covered by the law.
Okay, we'll go for a break.
Did you know high-quality versions of all episodes of Freedom Rocks are available on DVD? Each DVD contains 3 episodes for just $15. We also have specials that aren't on RCTV or YouTube. You can find links to all of our DVDs on the Freedom Rocks website, freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com. As you may have noticed, you can watch Freedom Rocks for free on RCTV or on YouTube, but it takes money to produce good quality TV shows. You can support Freedom Rocks by shopping at our Cafe Press shop. There you can find t-shirts for men and women, tote and gym bags, coffee mugs, beer steins, food and beverage thermoses, and a bunch of other items Cafe Press offers. You can find our shop at cafepress.com/freedomrocks, all lowercase and no apostrophe.
Okay, we're back. We were talking about the assault weapons, and I'd like to take that term apart. So-called. Let's take the term apart. You have the assault and you have a weapon. Which one of those two things are illegal? I mean, which one are...
Assault is illegal.
Right. I mean, that was sort of like my point. Didn't in Rochester, wasn't there a police officer assaulted with a steak knife?
I don't remember, but I'm sure at some point. It just
happened like last week, I believe.
Okay.
And it was a steak knife. Should we register steak knives or list them as assault weapons and have steak knives registered? And you can't have one unless you have a registration?
Well, someone used it to assault someone. They used it as a weapon to assault someone.
It's assault weapon. Yeah. So I have a little difficulty with the terminology and the approach. I mean, certainly I know what the state's trying to do. It's trying to protect the people. But they can't be there when the person needs protection. We need to empower people. So I would be more interested in seeing laws written that would then empower an individual to defend themselves without retribution when they use excessive force to defend themselves. For instance, the person with a protective order. Okay, very clearly, if the person has been violent and has a protective order and they come within 4 feet of you, protect yourself with any force you got.
Yeah.
And this is where I believe the law is wrong, because it doesn't empower people to protect themselves. But that's my libertarian streak coming out.
Well, it's a libertarian show.
Yeah. So there's other features in here. The licensing of weapons. Could you explain a little bit of what changes that this law is going to have on the licensing?
Okay, yeah. Let's see, there was a provision in section 400.00 of the penal law that used to say, the failure or refusal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to make the fingerprint check provided for in this section shall not constitute the sole basis for refusal to issue a permit pursuant to the provisions of this section. Unfortunately, that was struck. That was the so-called New York SAFE Act actually struck that language. So now if you apply for a pistol license, the state police send your fingerprints off to the FBI for an investigation to try and identify if you're a wanted person or convicted under an alias or something like that. Now if the FBI can't or won't perform that background, or if they can't perform that fingerprint check, that can now be the sole basis for refusing you a pistol license.
So if they just delay, don't respond at all, then you can't get a license.
Well, so what it says is that it used to say that can't be the sole basis for, that shall not constitute the sole basis for refusal. Now it can constitute the sole basis, but it's not necessarily. So the federal government basically got a de facto gun ban in New York State because of the way New York State wrote its laws. Yes, except that licensing officers in the state can still issue licenses if the FBI doesn't respond to the background check, but they can also choose to use that as the sole basis for refusing a license. Okay. What's this about private sales and safe storage? Could you explain a little bit about what's changed there? It seems to me like the private sales thing is actually very, very unique and very new. Yeah, the private sales used to be perfectly legal in New York. See, now it says private sale or disposal of firearms, rifles, or shotguns. In addition to any other requirements pursuant to state and federal law, all sales, exchanges, or disposals of firearms, rifles, or shotguns shall be conducted in accordance with this section. That's Article 39 DDD of the General Business Law. Before any sale, exchange, or disposal pursuant to this article, a National Instant Criminal Background Check, commonly known as a NICS check, must be completed by a dealer who consents to conduct such check, and upon completion of such background check shall complete a document, the form of which shall be approved by the Superintendent of State Police, that identifies and confirms that such background check was performed. So basically, this is taking the same provision that applies to commercial firearm sales, shotgun, rifle, and firearm sales, and applying it to private sales between individuals.
Now, if I understand right, you can still transfer or sell a gun privately to somebody in your immediate family, which is your spouse or your children.
Immediate family.
But not your brothers or sisters or anyone else.
Let's see. Immediate family shall mean spouses, domestic partners, children, and stepchildren. Notice that it doesn't say parents.
No, it
doesn't say parents, doesn't say grandchildren, doesn't say grandparents or siblings.
Yeah, I think that's a part of the law that I think most people are going to miss, and it's going to cause some problems, I know.
Yeah.
The provisions related to persons with mental illness. And it was what we...
well, we can get into that after the next break.
Okay, let's take a break then, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Have you ever played WTF Sudoku?
You mean WTF as in what the f***?
Yes.
What the f*** is so all fired? What the f*** about Sudoku?
Regular Sudoku is played on a 9x9 grid with exactly one of every digit 1 through 9 in every row, column, and 3x3 grid.
So what?
WTF Sudoku is played on a 25x25 grid with exactly one of every letter A through Y in every row, column, and 5x5 group.
WTF. How can I play WTF Sudoku?
You can play it online at www.cybermansoftware.com/games. You can also buy a book of puzzles on Amazon.com. Just search for WTF Sudoku.
Book? You mean on paper?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's www.cybermansoftware.com/games, or by searching for WTF Sudoku on Amazon.com?
Yes.
Okay, we're back. Max, before we left, we were going
First, I generally like to remind people, this is a cable access show. That means we don't get Nielsen ratings, so we don't know you're watching unless you tell us you're watching, which you can do by swinging by this website at the bottom of your screen, Freedom Rocks. That's freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you did that. I could be fired. Yeah, I would like to get onto this provision of persons with mental illness. What does this new law do in terms of those individuals? Are they new restrictions? Are they restrictions that are just being emphasized again, or what?
From what I can tell, and I'm not an expert on mental health law, from what I can tell, the old provisions used to say that when someone was discharged from a mental facility, let's see, I forget where in the law that was. Basically, if someone's discharged from a mental facility, the director of the mental facility shall make a determination regarding that person's suitability to possess firearms. Under the old law, it said that they may make a determination. The only change from what I can see is that now they're required to make that determination. They're not required to prohibit someone from owning guns, but they're required to at least give a yes or no answer.
Okay, I believe aren't there sections of the law that the no way I'm thinking of the never mind. I was thinking of the provisions for the orders of protection. Let's move on to the clauses about ammunition. There's a whole section here about that. Elaborate.
Well, it's a monstrosity of legalese as far as what magazines will be legal or won't be legal. There's a number of logical inconsistencies, and I don't just mean the logic of assuming criminals will obey the law. But there's some paragraphs and sentences in here that aren't even logically complete sentences. But basically, for the most part, any magazine that holds more than 7 but fewer than 11 rounds that you possessed before the enactment of this law is still legal, but you can't load it with more than 7 rounds. I would speculate that you can have 7 rounds in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber, but that one hasn't been tested. Hasn't been tested under the law yet. I know that if you have 7, 8, or if you have an 8, 9, or 10 round magazine that you possessed before the effective date of the law, then you can still continue to possess that magazine, but you can only load it with 7 rounds. And all new magazines coming into the state have to be 7 or fewer rounds, because in the words of our governor, you don't need 10 bullets to kill a deer. But he doesn't know how many bullets you'll need to defend yourself in a home invasion.
I thought there was something in the law about having to have a license or be registered when you go buy the ammunition. Is there anything
that's for sellers? That's for ammunition sellers.
For sellers. And
I'm not sure when that goes into effect, but anyone who sells ammunition has to be either a federal firearm licensee or a dealer in ammunition, as those terms are defined in the law. And they have to actually conduct a background check when you purchase ammunition. So, I mean, obviously the joke is that you're going to have ammunition stores popping up in Pennsylvania across from the fireworks stores. You know, the fireworks stores that exist just across the line for the sole purpose of selling them to New Yorkers.
Right, yeah. Do you think they'll ever go into the micro-stamping of bullets and then making you fill out a report every time you fire one off and send back a casing?
I don't know. The micro-stamping bill always fails. Allegedly, the micro-stamping bill which is not part of this legislation, by the way. Allegedly, it would help identify the person who fires a shot. But Chris and I have been through over and over again why that fails, because you get smudged prints, you get refired shell casings, reloaded shell casings that are fired, and at best it connects to the gun, not the shooter. Mm-hmm. We did win on COBIZ. When the COBIZ system was in effect, there were 2 successful matches, 0 arrests. One, the statute of limitations ran out before they got a match, and the other one, the guy found that his gun was stolen.
We only have a little bit less than a couple minutes left. There's a bunch of other issues I'd like to talk about, but let's talk about the issue of the changes in safe storage of the weapons.
Okay, safe storage. I don't remember that in here, but let's see. I remember there was something about a community gun. Is that what you're talking about? Safe storage if someone in the house If someone in a household is ineligible?
Well, for instance, like the last case where we had a mentally challenged individual going to a school and killing people. The woman had a legally registered guns in the house. Obviously, they weren't safely stored.
Okay. The New York SAFE Act does require safe storage if you live in a house with someone who's legally ineligible to possess it. Mm-hmm. But there's also a provision in here about so-called community guns. Criminal facilitation, definitions and construction, for purposes of this article shall conduct, for purposes of this article, such conduct shall include but not be limited to making available, selling, exchanging, giving, or disposing of a community gun which in fact aids a person to commit a crime. And a community gun is basically just something that's
available for you.
That's available. You place it somewhere where other people can get it, can easily get it. But there are obviously some legal issues with that, but we don't have time.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, this is Freedom Rocks. Log on, let us know what you think, and hopefully see you soon.
Did you know Freedom Rocks has swag? You can help stimulate the economy and show how much you like Freedom Rocks at the same time. We've got t-shirts for men and women. We've got coffee mugs and beer steins. We've got food and beverage thermoses. You can get your own Freedom Rocks swag with the show logo, as seen in the opening title of the show, right here at our Cafe Press shop. That's cafepress.com/freedomrocks.